So, as I talked about in my last video, I was waiting for a backup for my Caldwell chronograph, which was giving me a lot of fits and frustration. So the backup arrived today, and I'm pretty pleased with it. Especially, let me do a little bit of background on what it is and why I went with it. Basically, it is a crony chronograph. As far as I know, they're not in production anymore. For sale quite often on eBay. My first chronograph, which I've only had two, the one prior to me having the Caldwell, was a crony chronograph that I had bought brand new, which at the time they were still in production. So that tells you, how long ago it was. I want to say probably somewhere between 8 and 10 years ago I bought that chronograph. But very reliable. Just always did what I asked it to do, which was read velocities. Destroyed it. Pretty expectedly, it destroyed it. 45 caliber, 244 grain slug into the plastic back sensor and metal wall. What I'm sure is cut and folded sheet metal, more or less, and I put it up for sale on eBay for parts only and managed to sell it. Keep your eye open. There's normally a couple at any given time for sale on eBay. Sometimes the asking price is a little bit ridiculous. They're almost always in an auction type selling situation. And what these crony chronographs were selling for, I'd already done my research on the Caldwell chronograph. And I knew what I could get for a brand new Caldwell chronograph and at what price. And these used crony chronographs being sold on eBay, by the time the auctions were done, were selling for well over what I could get a brand new Caldwell for. What I really found myself missing was that original crony chronograph that I had. So I've been back on eBay, and I've been watching the ones that go up for sale. I've been watching prices. I've been bidding. I've lost auctions just as I've done in the past. F1 chronographs. So I bid on a couple, didn't win. So I took a chance with one that I saw. The auction was starting at a price that I thought was decent. As long as the thing worked, it was a decent starting price. So I went ahead and bid $49.99. Once again, I was prepared to go higher than that and was fully expecting to have to go higher than that. But to my surprise, nobody else bid on it. Now, a couple of reasons I suspect no one did bid on it. You could tell by the photograph that this is not just an old crony model. It's a very old crony model, at least relative to the one that I had. Number one, mine was green. And at some point, if you research online about changes that the crony chronograph went through, their base F1 model at one point was red, and they started to redo production in green. That's the one that I had. It was green. The power switch was on the front, the display screen, on the bottom corner of the front display screen. This one first thing that jumped out at me was the location of the power button, which is actually inside the chronograph. That kind of led me to believe this is an old chronograph. The other thing that was a concern to me was the Crony chronograph that I originally had a startup screen very similar to the Caldwell. You turn it on, and I believe it's AL would display on the front screen. You'd have lines alternating, flashing on each side of the AL, top and bottom, a certain number of times, and then they'd stop in the middle of the A and the L. The picture of the display screen for this particular Crony chronograph showed 4 zeros across the screen. Now, I'm not familiar with Crony chronograph ever having that as a display. So that was kind of a red flag for me, but it was listed as used. eBay's definition of used means that it's working. There's cosmetic imperfections to it. It might be scratched, it might be dented, but it functions fully the way it's supposed to function. So I went ahead and took a chance, as I said, bid the minimum, $49.99, was prepared to go higher, but didn't have to go higher. No one else bid on it. What I was a little bit nervous, in addition to the other things I was already nervous about, was this person's ability to determine that this was functioning properly. I'll put a battery in it. Something shows up on the display screen, it must be working. So the one thing that put my mind at ease was the fact that the condition of this was only listed as used. It was not listed as 4 parts only. So that implies that it's in full, capable working condition. And if it wasn't, I would contact the seller and return the item. So anyway, today it came. I unpacked it. The one thing that was not shown in any of the pictures was any type of additional hardware other than the chronograph itself. I didn't expect it to come with any type of diffusers. It didn't show any diffusers in the picture. It didn't include diffusers in the description. So, and I'm like, I've already got the ones that I have for my Caldwell. I believe that's one of the things I threw out when I sold my previous chronograph. The diffusers I had for that particular model were cracked and in pretty bad shape prior to me shooting the chronograph, and I just decided to toss those. So that's what this was. It was just the chronograph unit. First thing I did was grab a 9-volt battery and get it attached and turned on the unit. And the display immediately went to 4 zeros. No flashing lines, no AL display. What I did do was quickly pass my hand over the sensors, and it was giving me a reading. The one thing that allows me to use the diffusers that I have for the Caldwell with this particular chronograph, I'm not seeing, there aren't any holes in the unit for rods that would connect to a diffuser. From what I remember from my original Crony chronograph, the sensors on the sides of the photocells that pick up the shadow, there were holes for diffusers. So this even predates Crony using that particular setup for holding diffusers. I made a little wooden U-shaped box, so to speak, a box without a top. and front or back. Just a bottom and two sides. And used wood shims to firmly hold the chronograph inside the box, the wooden box. And what I did was, on the pieces of scrap wood I used for the sides walls, they were thick enough where I drilled holes in each side, front and back, and used those to hold diffusers. I am using the Harbor Freight lights that I have covered in a previous video. They seem to be working nicely. In the first shot, it gives a reading for consistently. The main thing, to me, the most important thing, having been through and gone through and continuing to go through with that Caldwell, this thing is giving me a velocity reading. The other thing is the velocity readings that I'm getting are extremely similar, if not exactly the same, as what I was getting when I could get readings from the Caldwell. Let me show some of those. Now, these are readings, velocities that were shot with Falcon 13.43 grain pellet. Now, those velocity readings were multiple shots from a full fill of 15 MPa. And as you saw, the first velocity reading was 851. Now, that jumped out at me from having just done the previous video and pointed out that I had gotten a reading off of the Caldwell with these pellets on a full fill. I believe the reading was like 849. So that 851 kind of jumped out at me as being an accurate reading. And the subsequent ones, showed slight drops, but consistent velocity readings. So I'm very happy about that. Right now, I'm planning on holding on to the Caldwell. I just got to the point where I was fed up with it and definitely, within a reasonable price range, wanted an alternative to the Caldwell. For being as old as this thing is, but functioning the way that it does, I'm pretty happy. My personal opinion, having owned a Crony brand chronograph and having owned this Caldwell and now having this Crony chronograph, as old as it is, if you can, my personal opinion, that's all this is. If you can find a decently priced used Crony chronograph and you can win that auction on eBay for it, I would definitely recommend it over a Caldwell. Those of you who are out there, feel free to leave comments. Hey, I've got a Caldwell chronograph. I don't have any issues with it. Looking at a specific Caldwell lighting kit or getting this, I just felt more comfortable getting this. And I don't regret that decision. That's basically what this is all about, this particular video. I do want to give a shout out to the people that at one time manufactured the Crony chronograph. The 2 units now that I have had have been reliable, to say the least. And I can't say that about my Caldwell. So feel free to leave comments. You've got a Caldwell chronograph. It works great. I wouldn't doubt that there are. As I said, this very well may be just the particular unit that I ended up getting sent when I bought it. Everyone has lemons that make it through their production line. It could very well could be something I am doing that I shouldn't be doing, or something I'm not doing that I should be doing, as far as, maximizing the performance of the Caldwell. All I know is what I am doing now is what I did do with my previous Crony chronograph and didn't have any major issues whatsoever getting velocity readings. And now I'm doing the same thing with this Crony chronograph and not having any major issues getting velocity readings. That's all I know. So, guys, I hope this was a little bit informative. It did allow me to get the dot sight back on and the sling attachment piece back on the dovetail. So, guys, thanks for checking out the video. Again, I hope I was able to help you in some way. Make a decision if you're out there in the chronograph market. Then again, do your research. Don't just rely on what my experience has been. Other people may have had the exact opposite experiences with these two brands of chronograph. Wouldn't be surprised at all. There's videos out there and reviews out there of people who have had a Caldwell and had a Crony chronograph and just absolutely hated the Crony chronograph and really enjoy their Caldwell chronograph. But this is my experience. So if it helps, great. I'm glad if it does. Thanks for checking out the video, and remember to stay safe and shoot safe. One thing I wanted to do, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm kind of putting things away, closing up shop here as far as making this particular video. But, you know, going back and looking at some of the things I've been through in this HPA project, including being at points where this particular thing would not even hold air. And it is. It seems to be very reliable from that standpoint at this particular point. And it's shooting accurately, it's shooting powerfully, and I'm in a position now where I can get consistent velocity readings. So overall, this particular project / ordeal, I've ended being extremely satisfied and happy with how everything turned out, and that's in a large part because of various suggestions that you guys have made to me. So I know how much you guys have helped me along the way on this project. So all I could hope to do is return that in some small way and possibly be helping other people out there considering doing something similar with their Crosman air gun. Okay? That's what I wanted to say. Thank you. Take care.